The galaxy had always looked down on humanity, a species so young and confined to a small blue planet that the Council of Ten, the dominant alien coalition, barely registered Earth on their star maps. And when they did, it was with polite indifference, a fleeting acknowledgement that humans existed and were irrelevant. The counselors, with their long tentacles, crystalline bodies, and omniscient data-link minds, saw humanity as a curious but negligible anomaly, a species that lacked the experience, technology, and discipline to ever challenge a real galactic power. Yet the humans have been observing them, quietly monitoring alien fleets, decoding communication networks, reverse engineering capture vessels, and building alliances across the stars in ways the Council could not fathom, because humanity had a way of taking what others assumed impossible and making it inevitable, a trait born from survival against countless planetary disasters, wars, and the merciless brutality of natural selection, which had hardened their ingenuity and made them adaptive in ways the galaxy's oldest species could not even conceptualize. And now, on the eve of the Council's largest military assembly in a century, the humans were ready to demonstrate that the rules governing galactic order, the ones the Council took for granted, were about to be rewritten, because human fleets, hidden within asteroid fields and disguised as mining conglomerates, had positioned themselves at critical, interstellar choke points, their weapons engineered to exploit weaknesses no alien species thought to defend, their strategy untraceable by conventional detection, and their leadership composed of officers who had survived both planetary insurrections and interstellar skirmishes, understood that the galaxy's reliance on tradition and protocol would be their greatest advantage. And as the Council convened in their orbiting citadel above the star of Aurelian, debating economic sanctions and trade, disputes with distant sectors, a small human reconnaissance ship slipped past patrol drones and entered the citadel's outer perimeter, broadcasting a message not of surrender or negotiation but a warning, a direct transmission to the counselors themselves, stating plainly that humanity had surpassed their expectations and would no longer adhere to galactic rules designed to constrain, suppress, or contain them. And the message was simple, concise, yet uncomfortably chilling. We are coming, and we do not negotiate with those who ignore us. And as the Council scrambled to decode the human message, the first signs of humanity's offensive became clear, as a network of electromagnetic pulses disabled the Citadel's defensive systems, allowing larger ships, previously camouflaged as cargo carriers, to breach the perimeter, and in the command chamber, the counselors, who had faced countless rebellions and interstellar insurgencies, found themselves unprepared for tactics that broke every precedent. Ships moving in ways deemed impossible by physics as the humans leveraged gravitational anomalies and quantum slipstream engines to reposition faster than any alien sensor array could register, and within hours, the human fleet had captured critical points, disabling orbital defense platforms, redirecting supply lines, and severing communications across multiple sectors, all while civilian populations remained untouched, a demonstration of both power and discipline. And the Council's shock turned to panic as reports streamed into human operatives infiltrating key installations, using adaptive camouflage, advanced AI-assisted combat algorithms, and hand-to-hand strategies that exploited alien physiology in ways no manual had predicted, revealing not just superior tactics, but a fundamental understanding of alien biology and psychology, as officers who had never doubted their invincibility began to question everything they knew. And while the human leaders coordinated across light minutes of space with precision that seemed impossible, their diplomats prepared messages not for surrender, but for the revelation of a new galactic hierarchy, emphasizing that humanity's rise would not be tempered by fear, bribery, or coercion. And as the first direct confrontation occurred above the asteroid belt of Sarion Prime, alien warships found themselves disoriented by human maneuvers, energy weapons misfiring due to electronic countermeasures the humans had integrated seamlessly into their hulls, and boarding parties discovered that human marines had developed exosuits allowing them to survive in vacuum, operate independently of traditional life support, and neutralize advanced alien defenses, turning what should have been an overwhelming disadvantage into a decisive superiority. While back on Earth, scientists monitored the campaign in real time, adjusting fleets, providing hyper-accurate intelligence, and ensuring logistics that even the largest alien coalitions could not hope to anticipate. And as days passed, the galaxy watched in awe and terror as human forces, operated with a level of cohesion and creativity that defied centuries of alien arrogance, dismantled one sector's defenses after another, exploiting political rivalries among the Council, and turning expected allies into passive observers who could only marvel at humanity's audacity and efficiency. And the humans themselves, though vastly outnumbered, displayed a level of strategic patience and moral clarity that inspired their own ranks and demoralized their opponents, because they did not fight for conquest, but for acknowledgement, for survival, and for the unshakable belief that no species should underestimate the resourcefulness of humanity. And in the midst of these battles, human engineers introduced weapons that had no precedent in the galaxy, adaptive railguns capable of recalibrating trajectory mid-flight, drones capable of learning and anticipating enemy maneuvers instantaneously, and communication systems that render traditional interception technologies useless, demonstrating not just superior firepower, but superior intellect and adaptability. And as weeks turned into months, entire sectors once controlled by alien coalitions fell into human hands without a single unnecessary civilian casualty, leaving the Council both enraged and humiliated, struggling to respond to a foe that refused to play by the rules and whose methods defied centuries of military doctrine. And when a summit was finally convened to discuss a ceasefire, human ambassadors entered not as supplicants, but as equals, presenting data and outcomes proving that the galaxy's power structures were no longer immutable. And while some counselors advocated for retaliation, they found themselves isolated, powerless against the overwhelming evidence of humanity's superiority in both strategy and moral discipline. And as humans consolidated control, establishing trade networks, defense protocols, and interstellar governance that prioritize fairness and adaptability, the aliens began to recognize the full extent of their misjudgment, that underestimating humanity was not merely a tactical error, but a strategic catastrophe, because humans had not only broken the expected rules of engagement, but had rewritten the very framework by which the galaxy measured power, ingenuity, and resilience. And in this new order, the humans continue to advance, pushing boundaries of science, diplomacy, and military capability, setting standards for cooperation and competition alike. And while the Council and other species adjusted to this unprecedented shift, they could not ignore the fact that the humans had demonstrated a simple but profound truth. Rules in the galaxy could be broken, alliances could be overturned, and the underestimated could rise to dominate through a combination of intelligence, audacity, and unyielding determination. And as the story of humanity's rise spread across systems, inspiring some and intimidating others, the galaxy was forced to reckon with a reality no one had anticipated, that the species they had dismissed as inconsequential was now the standard by which future conflicts, negotiations, and survival would be measured. And with every passing moment, the humans solidified not just a military victory, but a psychological one, proving that courage, creativity, and strategic brilliance could overcome numbers, tradition, and arrogance, and that in the endless expanse of stars, the humans had carved out a place where they not only survived, but defined the new rules. The humans who had once been underestimated, ignored, and dismissed had broken the galaxy's rules, and in doing so had won. As the humans continued to consolidate their influence across previously alien-dominated sectors, their expansion was not marked by reckless conquest, but by meticulous planning, a combination of advanced analytics, deep reconnaissance, and decentralized command that allowed even small human contingents to operate autonomously yet in perfect coordination with the broader strategy. And the aliens who had once dismissed them were forced to grapple with a reality that was both humiliating and terrifying, as every failed counterattack exposed the depth of human preparation and the extent of their technological innovations. And human scientists revealed weapons that operated not just on raw power, but on predictive modeling, anticipating enemy maneuvers before they occurred, while human engineers retrofitted captured alien technology to improve efficiency, durability, and speed, creating hybrid systems that the original designers could not have imagined. And military officers, many of whom had begun their careers on Earth defending against terrestrial conflicts, demonstrated battlefield adaptability that confounded alien commanders who relied on rigid hierarchy and centuries of tradition. And as humans penetrated the core systems of alien territories, they unveiled operations that combined psychological warfare, precise strikes, and propaganda aimed not at annihilation, but at breaking the overconfidence that had defined alien strategy for generations. And while some alien, Populations initially resisted, believing that humanity was another transient force. The humans employed both empathy and pragmatism, providing protection, infrastructure, and governance that allowed local species to maintain their autonomy while aligning strategically with human objectives, which in turn created internal fractures among the Council's ranks, as dissenting voices began to question whether continued resistance was worth the escalating losses, and human diplomats capitalized on these divisions, forging temporary alliances and exploiting rivalries, while their intelligence networks harvested data in real time, revealing vulnerabilities in alien communication, logistics, and command that had been considered unassailable. And as the humans expanded further into the galactic frontier, they introduced novel approaches to space warfare, including cloaked fleets capable of relocating faster than alien sensors could detect, energy shields that adapted instantaneously to weapon frequency, and tactical drones that operated with near-human intuition, all of which forced alien commanders into reactive stances, always one step behind. And in the midst of these operations, key human figures emerged whose decisions would define the campaign, a mix of seasoned military tacticians, engineers with near-genius intellects, and political leaders who understood the value of morale and perception. And these humans were not infallible, yet their ability to learn, improvise, and turn apparent setbacks into opportunities was unmatched, creating a momentum that the aliens could neither predict nor counteract. And on multiple worlds, entire alien fleets found themselves stranded, cut off from resupply, and subject to precision strikes that dismantled their infrastructure while leaving their populations unharmed, demonstrating the human philosophy that strength was not measured in destruction alone, but in the ability to enforce strategic objectives efficiently and decisively. And as word of humanity's tactics spread across alien territories, fear began to ripple through species that had never experienced genuine existential threat from outside their coalitions, as they watched humans repurpose their own weapons against them, manipulate gravitational anomalies for tactical advantage, and deploy autonomous units capable of multi-theater operations, all while coordinating seamlessly with distant headquarters. And within the Council itself, panic and discord grew, with some counselors advocating for negotiation, some for scorched retaliation, and others for withdrawal. Yet all were constrained by the clear evidence that humans had already mastered the art turning conventional expectations into liabilities. And as the humans implemented broader strategies, they also focused on long-term stabilization, establishing governance councils, trade networks, and defensive protocols in newly acquired sectors, ensuring that territories remained secure, populations loyal or neutral, and supply chains unbroken. And this holistic approach made human advances not just temporary victories, but lasting shifts in the galactic balance of power. And while the aliens struggled to adapt, human researchers continued pushing the boundaries of science, developing propulsion systems that allowed near-instantaneous relocation across light minutes, communications that rendered stealth tactics ineffective, and artificial intelligence capable of autonomously coordinating millions of operational units simultaneously. And as humans approached the heart of the Council's power, they did so with the confidence born of months of flawless execution, morale strengthened by victories that combined intellect, courage, and adaptability. And citizens across Earth and allied systems observed the unfolding campaign with awe and growing belief in their species' destiny. And as human forces began the final phase of their strategic encirclement of the Council's central systems, alien commanders faced an existential dilemma: to fight with traditional tactics and face annihilation, or to acknowledge the inevitability of humanity's superiority and negotiate terms that preserve some semblance of their authority. And in this pivotal moment, humans demonstrated their mastery of both diplomacy and warfare simultaneously, presenting options that emphasize survival for those willing to cooperate, while preparing decisive strikes for those who would resist. And these operations highlighted not only the tactical brilliance of human forces, but also their ethical framework, showing that dominance need not equate to cruelty, that the rules of the galaxy could indeed be broken yet applied in a way that maintained order, stability, and respect for life. And as alien populations began to accept human governance voluntarily in some sectors, while others continued to resist with futile aggression, it became undeniable that a new epoch was beginning, one defined by the human approach to strategy, innovation, and moral authority. And while the Council had once assumed that centuries of experience, technology, and power were sufficient to maintain control over the galaxy, they were confronted with a species that did not adhere to those assumptions, a species that thrived in chaos, exploited rigidity, and rewrote the very definition of galactic rules. And as the humans continued to advance, integrating alien knowledge, optimizing fleet maneuvers, and leveraging interstellar logistics in ways the Council could not anticipate, they solidified their position not only as military victors, but as architects of a new galactic paradigm, demonstrating conclusively that ingenuity, adaptability, and unwavering resolve could overcome size, history, and expectation, and that the underestimated species of Earth had become the measure by which all future interstellar conflicts would be judged, for humans had broken the galaxy's rules, not through blind aggression, but through calculated brilliance, and in doing so it secured a position of dominance that no coalition, no matter how ancient, could reverse. As the humans pushed deeper into the core territories of the Council, their operations became a masterclass in combined strategy, blending the calculated precision of military science with the unpredictable creativity that defined humanity. And as alien fleets scrambled to intercept them, they discovered time and again that the humans were already several steps ahead, anticipating maneuvers that had never been seen in galactic warfare, exploiting weaknesses in alien communications, propulsion, and tactical doctrine, while maintaining perfect coordination between widely dispersed task forces. And human engineers revealed even more advanced technology, including adaptive cloaking fields that rendered entire squadrons invisible until they struck, energy weapons that could modulate frequency to bypass conventional shields, and autonomous strike units capable of independent decision-making with near-human judgment. And the Council, which had prided itself on centuries of accumulated experience and military doctrine, found itself impotent, forced to watch the systems fail without a single decisive engagement, populations willingly aligning with human administrators, and critical infrastructure repurposed to support the human advance. And in these operations, human officers demonstrated not only technical brilliance, but also moral clarity, refusing to target civilians, safeguarding cultural sites, and using precision strikes to minimize collateral damage, a stark contrast to the alien forces whose approach had always relied on overwhelming firepower and fear to maintain control. And as the humans systematically dismantled alien defensive networks, they revealed a deeper understanding of galactic politics, leveraging interspecies rivalries, exploiting bureaucratic inertia, and planting seeds of dissent within alien command structures, ensuring that resistance crumbled from within even before human forces arrived. And while some alien species attempted desperate counterattacks using hidden weapons and unconventional strategies, the humans anticipated and neutralized each threat, often turning the aliens' own innovations against them, demonstrating a combination of tactical brilliance and adaptive learning that alien commanders could neither comprehend nor counter. And across the galaxy, observers began to understand that humanity's rise was not simply the result of superior technology or strategy, but of a fundamental mindset that valued flexibility, ingenuity, and cooperation across all levels of command. And as human fleets approached the central command stations of the Council, the aliens faced a choice: surrender and preserve their populations, attempt futile resistance, or risk total annihilation. And the humans presented their ultimatum not as a threat, but as a demonstration of capability, offering terms that emphasize governance, order, and integration, while making clear that continued hostility would be met with decisive and unavoidable force. And as alien leaders deliberated, human diplomats engaged with local systems, forging alliances, establishing trade networks, and integrating multiple species into a cooperative framework that enhanced both defense and governance. And these efforts demonstrated that humanity's power was not merely destructive, but constructive, creating stability and opportunity even as they imposed control. And within the Council chambers, debates raged as members realized that their centuries of dominance had been shattered not by overwhelming force alone, but by the humans' ability to think beyond traditional constraints, to coordinate across light years of space, and to maintain moral and strategic coherence under conditions that had always led other species to panic or fail. And as the humans executed the next phase of their campaign, they deployed fleets through gravitational anomalies, navigated sectors previously thought inaccessible, and conducted operations that, made alien sensors and algorithms obsolete, leaving commanders scrambling to interpret incomplete data, while human Marines infiltrated key installations using exosuits capable of withstanding vacuum and extreme radiation, demonstrating once again that their adaptation and preparation far outstripped that of any alien species. And as sectors fell under human control, the Council began to fracture, with some members advocating peace and integration, others plotting desperate countermeasures, and still others surrendering quietly, unable to reconcile centuries of pride with the undeniable reality of humanity's superiority. And in parallel, human scientists continued to advance propulsion systems, energy management, and artificial intelligence, creating a feedback loop of technological growth that allowed rapid adaptation to any scenario, ensuring that every human initiative remained one step ahead of alien response. And as the human influence expanded, entire regions previously under alien control voluntarily joined human-led governance frameworks, creating a stable platform for both defense and expansion. And while some pockets of resistance remained, they were systematically neutralized through precision operations that combined intelligence, engineering, and disciplined military action, leaving populations largely unharmed and demonstrating that dominance could be achieved without cruelty, that the galaxy's rules could be rewritten with intelligence, strategy, and moral clarity. And as the humans solidified their control over the Council's former territories, it became clear that the galaxy itself had shifted fundamentally, that the underestimated species of Earth had not only survived centuries of neglect and condescension, but had risen to a position of unprecedented influence, rewriting the norms of interstellar engagement, governance, and conflict. And while alien populations adjusted to the new reality, the humans continued to push forward, integrating alien knowledge, expanding trade and scientific collaboration, and demonstrating that their ascendancy was not an anomaly but the product of a species that thrived on challenge, adaptability, and relentless ingenuity. And in doing so, humanity had proven an enduring lesson to the galaxy. Underestimate the humans at your peril, for they do not merely break rules. They redefine the very structure of power, strategy, and survival across the stars. As humanity extended its influence into the innermost sectors of the Council's former territory, their strategy became increasingly sophisticated, blending military precision, scientific innovation, and psychological insight into a seamless campaign that alien commanders could neither predict nor counter. And with every operation, humans demonstrated not only technological superiority, but also an uncanny ability to anticipate alien behavior, exploiting long-standing cultural assumptions and rigid hierarchies to create confusion and inefficiency, while human engineers continued to develop adaptive technologies that responded in real time to threats, including variable shield systems that altered energy absorption patterns, autonomous reconnaissance units capable of relaying tactical adjustments instantaneously across light minutes of distance, and quantum link communication nodes that rendered traditional interception methods obsolete, and human officers on the front lines leveraged these tools with precision, orchestrating multi-pronged maneuvers that disrupted alien supply lines, neutralized fortified positions, and simultaneously protected civilian populations. And while alien fleets attempted countermeasures, they found themselves repeatedly outmaneuvered, their superior numbers and firepower rendered ineffective against strategies that combined anticipation, deception, and rapid adaptation. And on the political front, human diplomats engaged with alien species previously under Council control, establishing governance councils, facilitating trade agreements, and creating cooperative defense protocols that integrated alien resources while maintaining human strategic objectives, thereby turning former subjects into allies and minimizing resistance. And in parallel, human intelligence units worked tirelessly to decode alien decision-making patterns, identifying vulnerabilities in command structures, communication protocols, and fleet coordination, and using this knowledge to direct target operations that sowed further discord among Council loyalists. And in battle after battle, human Marines demonstrated resilience, creativity, and unflinching discipline, employing exosuits and adaptive weapons to navigate hostile environments, neutralize advanced defenses, and secure critical assets, often turning what appeared to be disadvantages into decisive advantages. And as weeks passed, alien commanders grew increasingly desperate there, strategies increasingly fragmented, and their morale eroded, while humans maintained a calm, methodical approach, demonstrating a level of operational coherence and foresight that no species in the galaxy had previously achieved. And as humans began to dominate key trade routes, energy nodes, and strategic orbital platforms, the remaining council members realized that their centuries of authority and control had been fundamentally undermined, and any attempts to resist were met not with brute force alone, but with surgical precision that maximized effect while minimizing unnecessary destruction, demonstrating that humanity's ascendancy was as much intellectual and moral as it was technological and military. And as the humans approached the Council's central command, their forces employed novel tactics, including hyperspatial maneuvers that repositioned entire fleets faster than alien sensors could track, electronic countermeasures that disrupted coordination among alien vessels, and strategic use of psychological operations that eroded confidence, fostered hesitation, and encouraged defection. And while alien populations initially resisted through propaganda and misinformation, the consistent demonstration of human discipline, ethics, and capability persuaded many to voluntarily accept new governance structures, further destabilizing the Council's power base. And within the Council itself, debate and division intensified, with some leaders advocating surrender, others plotting desperate strikes, and a few resigning entirely in the face of humanity's undeniable supremacy. And as humans consolidated their hold over key sectors, they implemented integrated systems for resource management, population protection, and interstellar communication that enhanced both security and prosperity, creating a framework in which alien civilizations could thrive under human leadership while ensuring that rebellion or insubordination remained strategically untenable. And throughout this process, human scientists and engineers continue to innovate, refining propulsion technology, energy weapon systems, and autonomous command protocols to maintain a continuous edge over any potential threat, while human military strategists adapted their tactics to new intelligence, environmental variables, and enemy behavior, ensuring that every operation was conducted with maximum effectiveness and minimal waste. And in doing so, humanity established not just dominance, but a sustainable model of power, one that integrated technology, diplomacy, and ethics to redefine interstellar authority. And as the campaign reached its critical phase, human fleets coordinated a final series of maneuvers designed to secure the Council's core systems, neutralize remaining threats, and solidify long-term stability, demonstrating an unparalleled synthesis of foresight, adaptability, and precision. And while some alien factions attempted last-minute resistance, they found themselves systematically outmatched by a combination of tactical brilliance, technological superiority, and strategic patience. And as humans took control of the Council's capital stations, the galaxy witnessed not just a military conquest, but a transformation in the understanding of power, strategy, and survival. For humanity had proven that intelligence, adaptability, and moral clarity could overcome tradition, arrogance, and overwhelming numbers. And in doing so, they did not merely win battles, but reshaped the structure of galactic governance, establishing a new paradigm in which underestimated species could rise to prominence. And the galaxy, once dismissive of Earth, now recognized that the humans had not only broken the rules, but rewritten them entirely, creating a new standard by which all interstellar interaction, conflict, and diplomacy would be measured for generations to come. And as the dust settled and human administrators coordinated the integration of alien sectors into this new framework, it became clear that the underestimated humans of Earth had become the architect of a galaxy that operated under principles of ingenuity, ethical dominance, and strategic foresight, a galaxy in which the old rules no longer applied, and humanity had won. With the Council's capital stations now under human control and the old power structure collapsing, the galaxy entered a period of uneasy silence, the kind that follows a storm so violent that no one is certain whether it is truly past, or is only gathering strength for another strike. And during this time, humanity did not relax or celebrate, because their leaders understood that the most dangerous moment in any conflict is not the battle itself, but the transition that follows. When defeated, power still possessed pride-hidden fleets, and the will to attempt one final reversal, and so human fleets spread outward in carefully planned patterns, securing hyperspace corridors, stabilizing border systems, and deploying sensor networks that could detect even the smallest unauthorized movement, while intelligence divisions monitored alien communications for signs of coordinated rebellion. And across former Council territories, human administrators worked with local leaders to restore, disrupted trade, repair orbital infrastructure, and guarantee civilian safety, knowing that stability would do more to end resistance than fear ever could. And this approach confused many alien strategists who had been raised to believe that dominance must always be enforced through constant displays of overwhelming violence. Yet what they now witnessed was a power that could destroy them, but chose instead to organize, protect, and integrate. And the psychological shift began to erode the last foundations of Council loyalty, as entire fleets stood down rather than fight a species that clearly did not seek extermination but could no longer be challenged. And in the background of this transformation, human scientists continued to push forward, analyzing captured alien archives that contained centuries of research, star charts, and experimental technology, accelerating human development at a pace that shocked even their own experts. And new propulsion theories, energy containment, methods, and computational models emerged, giving humanity capabilities that surpassed anything the Council had ever fielded, while military planners refined doctrines based on a recent campaign, codifying lessons learned about multi-species warfare, adaptive command, and the exploitation of rigid hierarchical systems. And at the same time, human diplomats convened interstellar assemblies that included not just former Council members, but neutral and fringe civilizations, offering them a place in a new framework built on mutual defense, open trade, and collective security. And though many attended with suspicion, they could not ignore the reality that the humans had defeated the greatest power the galaxy had ever known without collapsing into chaos, and that alone commanded attention and reluctant respect. And as weeks passed, isolated pockets of resistance did flare, small warlords and hardline Council remnants launching raids in the hope of reigniting a broader conflict. But each was neutralized with precision, human rapid response groups appearing seemingly out of nowhere, disabling ships, capturing leaders, and withdrawing without unnecessary bloodshed, reinforcing perception that there was no corner of space beyond human reach. And slowly, even the most stubborn factions began to understand that the age of the Council was over, replaced by an order that was faster, more adaptive, and far less bound by tradition. And in private, many alien leaders admitted that their greatest mistake had not been losing the war, but underestimating the mindset of the species that fought it, a species that learned from every encounter, questioned every assumption, and refused to be constrained by rules designed by others. And as humanity's influence continued to expand, so did the realization across the stars that the old definitions of power no longer applied, that numbers, age, and legacy meant little against a civilization that could outthink, outmaneuver, and outadapt any opponent. And the galaxy, which had once dismissed Earth as a minor world on the edge of relevance, now watched as humans shaped trade routes, security doctrine, and political norms, not through fear alone, but through undeniable competence. And in doing so, humanity proved that their victory was not a moment, but a transformation, the beginning of an era in which the rules that had governed interstellar civilization for millennia had been permanently altered by a species that had refused to accept its assigned place, and had instead claimed a central role through intelligence, resolve, and the courage to break the system that once sought to contain them. As the new order began to stabilize, the deeper consequences of humanity's rise started to unfold across the galaxy, and what unsettled the surviving Council factions most was not the loss of territory or fleets, but the realization that human methods were spreading, that younger civilizations were studying human doctrine, human technology, and human political structures, learning from a species that had proven rigid tradition could be defeated by flexibility and relentless adaptation. And in hidden academies and recovered data vaults, alien strategists replayed battle simulations of human maneuvers, trying to understand how a civilization so young had coordinated across light years with such precision, how their commanders had been empowered to think independently while remaining perfectly aligned with overall objectives, and how their scientists had closed technological gaps in years that had taken other centuries. And the answer that emerged again and again was unsettling in its simplicity. Humans did not wait for permission from history. They experimented, failed, learned, and advanced at a pace that no slow-evolving galactic bureaucracy could match. And this realization drove some alien leaders to seek genuine cooperation rather than reluctant submission, opening research exchanges, military integration programs, and shared governance experiments that further strengthened the human-led framework, while in parallel, remnants of the old council attempted to form a shadow coalition, pooling their remaining resources in secret shipyards and hidden systems, convinced that one decisive strike could shatter the fragile stability and restore their dominance. Yet every movement they made was quietly tracked, their communications decoded, their supply chains mapped, because human intelligence networks had evolved into a web so dense and adaptive that secrecy itself had become almost impossible. And when the Shadow Coalition finally launched its desperate, offensive, a coordinated assault aimed at multiple human-controlled hubs, they found human forces already waiting, fleets positioned with exact knowledge of enemy vectors, defensive grids tuned to their weapon frequencies, and counter-strike units prepared to sever their command structure within minutes. And the resulting engagements were swift and devastating, not grand battles but precise dismantlings. As key ships were disabled, leadership captured, and the remaining vessels forced to surrender or flee into deep space. And with that failure, the last illusion that the old order could be restored collapsed. And across the galaxy, the narrative shifted from one of reluctant acceptance to one of cautious alignment, as civilizations began to plan their futures within a system shaped by human strategic logic. And on Earth and its allied worlds, leaders understood that victory carried responsibility, that ruling through fear alone would eventually breed the same stagnation and arrogance that had doomed the Council. And so they invested heavily in education, joint defense, and shared scientific development, ensuring that the new structure remained dynamic rather than ossified. And as decades of progress were compressed into years through combined research and shared resources, technologies emerged that allowed safer hyperspace travel, more efficient energy generation, and planetary defense systems capable of protecting entire systems from extinction-level threats. And these achievements further reinforce the perception that humanity's rise had not been an accident of war, but the natural outcome of a civilization that thrived on challenge and complexity. And among the stars, a quiet understanding spread that the species which had once been dismissed as primitive and politically insignificant had not only broken the galaxy's rules of war, but had broken its assumptions about who was destined to lead, and that the age of static empires and unchanging hierarchies had given way to an era defined by adaptability, cooperation under firm leadership, and a constant expectation of improvement. And at the center of this transformation stood humanity, no longer the underestimated newcomer, but the standard against which strategic thought, technological progress, and political resilience were now measured in a galaxy reshaped by their rise, moved forward under rules that bore the unmistakable imprint of the species that had dared to defy the old order and had proven, through intellect and resolve, that they deserved to win. As the last organized resistance of the old council faded into history, the galaxy entered a phase of deep reflection. And for many species, this was the first time they had ever been forced to confront the idea that their place in the universe was not fixed by age, size, or inherited authority, but by adaptability and the will to change. And within this shifting landscape, humanity's influence became cultural, as well as political and military, as their methods of problem-solving, decentralized command, and relentless innovation spread through academies, fleet training programs, and scientific institutions across multiple civilizations. And alien officers who once would have relied strictly on inherited doctrine now study human battle records, learning how small, flexible units could outperform massive, rigid formations, how independent commanders could act with initiative without fracturing strategic unity, and how constant feedback between science, intelligence, and frontline forces could compress decades of development into a single campaign. And this transformation unsettled traditionalists but inspired younger generations who saw in humanity a model of what a civilization could become when it refused to be limited by precedent. And at the same time, human leadership remained acutely aware that dominance carried the seed of future decline if it hardened into the same arrogance that had once characterized the Council. And so they invested in systems designed to challenge their own assumptions, encouraging dissent within command structures, constant red teaming of strategic plans, and the deliberate inclusion of non-human perspectives in decision-making, ensuring that stagnation would be resisted as fiercely as any external enemy. And in the outer regions of known space, exploratory fleets pushed beyond charts once considered the boundary of civilization, driven by the same curiosity and restlessness that had propelled humanity from a single planet into a galactic power. And in these uncharted systems, they encountered new phenomena, strange stellar formations, and the first signs of civilizations even older and more distant than the fallen council, watching from the dark with cautious interest, and reports of these observers reached human command, not as immediate threats, but as reminders that the universe was vast and that today's victory did not guarantee tomorrow's security. And this understanding reinforced the core lesson that it carried: humanity through the conflict, that survival and leadership in the galaxy would always belong to those who learned fastest, adapted quickest, and refused to assume that the rules of the day would protect them forever. And across former council worlds, monuments were quietly erected, not to glorify conquest, but to mark in an age of complacency. And in their place, new institutions rose, academies, research hubs, and joint defense centers, symbols of a future built on shared strength rather than enforced submission. And as trade and communication networks expanded under human coordination, linking distant systems with unprecedented speed and reliability, the flow of ideas accelerated, cultures mixed, and the sense of a single interconnected galactic community began to take shape, something the old council had spoken of but never truly achieved. And through all of this, the memory of how easily humanity had shattered centuries of assumed order remained a quiet warning in every strategic council and planetary senate. That underestimation was the most dangerous mistake a civilization could make, and that the species which had once been ignored on the fringes of space had risen not by destiny, but by discipline, creativity, and a refusal to accept limits imposed by others. And as the galaxy looked toward an uncertain but dynamic future, it did so under the undeniable understanding that the rules which once governed power, war, and authority had been permanently altered, and that any force, ancient or new, would now have to measure itself against a standard set by humanity, a standard forged in the moment they broke the old order and proved, beyond all doubt, that they were capable of winning. In the years that followed the collapse of the old council and the full establishment of the human-led order, the galaxy gradually came to understand the deeper meaning of what had occurred, not merely that one power had replaced another, but that the very logic of dominance had changed, and where one authority had rested on age, tradition, and the assumption that ancient civilizations must always rule over younger ones, it now rested on adaptability, unity, and the willingness to challenge every fixed belief. And historians across many species would later agree that the moment humanity broke the galaxy's rules was the moment the galaxy itself began to evolve, because the humans had proven that survival at the interstellar scale did not belong to those who clung to rigid doctrine, but to those who learned fastest and dared most. And former council worlds, once governed by distant elites who ruled through fear and inertia, now operated within a system that rewarded innovation, cooperation, and accountability. And though conflict still arose, as they always would among intelligent species, they were resolved within a framework shaped by human strategic thinking, where overwhelming force was balanced by restraint, and victory was measured not only in destroyed fleets, but in stabilized regions and preserved lives. And across academies, shipyards, and command centers, the story of humanity's rise was studied not as legend, but as instruction, a case study in how a civilization once dismissed as insignificant had identified the weaknesses in an entire galactic order and methodically dismantled them, replacing them with something stronger and more flexible. And among the stars, new powers would one day rise, new alliances would form, and new threats would emerge from beyond the explored regions. But none would forget the lesson written into history by the humans of Earth, that rules created by the powerful can be broken by the determined, that superiority is not inherited but earned, and that underestimation is the first step toward defeat. And so the galaxy moved forward into an era defined by vigilance and possibility, knowing that its future would no longer be shaped by complacent empires, but by those willing to question, adapt, and act with decisive clarity. And at the center of that future stood humanity, no longer the overlooked newcomer, but the force that had rewritten the laws of interstellar power, proving to every civilization, present and yet to come, that when humans refuse to accept the limits imposed upon them, they do not merely survive, they redefine the game, they break the rules, and they win.